Good Monday morning, everyone. Before I start my video today, I've got a couple things, some announcements and some things that I need to tell you all about. First thing I need to tell you is that later this week, I'm going to be cooking for homecoming. And so y'all have seen me do big batches of stuff before. This time I'm going to be making Parmesan chicken. Of course, I'm going to make some of my home canned green beans for this and some deviled eggs, sweet potato casserole, coleslaw, and then I'll make some kind of dessert. Now, if there's any of that you would be interested in seeing a video of, leave me a comment so that I know what I need to do. Another thing that I wanted to tell you is that I'm going to be doing another video, hopefully sometime this week. And this is going to be my story. There's going to be some really interesting things in this, but it's going to be, the video will be about what I found in food that was making me sick. And I'm not talking about just a few days sick. I'm talking about long-term sick. So be sure and be looking for that. And then the other thing I need to make sure you all are aware of, next week, a week from today, my husband will be having a heart cath done. So, depending on what they find whenever they do the heart cath and how that all goes, you may or may not see videos from me early next week. Hopefully by the end of the week, I will have some videos up, but just depends on how things go. And of course, if I do several videos on Saturday with, probably Friday and Saturday with my homecoming cooking, by the time I get all of those edited and ready to upload, some of those may go up next week. So be sure and be watching. And if you've not subscribed to my channel, this would be a good time to go ahead and do that. And just be sure that you're subscribed. And I appreciate it when you put a like on my videos, because that helps with the algorithm, helps other people to see my stuff, because it pushes it up in the line of, recommended videos. So I'll get into what I wanted to talk to y'all about today. So to get into this article that I was reading about food shortages, this is just astounding to me that 47.4 million people in the United States experience food insecurity. And among those, 14 million of them were children. Now, I learned in one of the doctor's offices here in East Tennessee that especially when children are not in school, like through the summer, holiday, like when they're out for Christmas holidays or fall break and spring break, we have many, many children who do not have enough food in their home, in their homes for them to eat. And this doctor's office was actually taking donations so that they could distribute to those children that they knew did not have food. So that's point number one that I wanted to make. There are major food insecurities already in the United States. Now, the next thing that I want to point out, and I don't really even have to point this out. You all know this already, that food prices have drastically gone up. And I'm not talking about last year or year before, even though we know that over the last few years that food prices have gone crazy high. But in 2025, from March until April, food prices went way up. They're expected to continue to go up for the remainder of the year. Now, some of this could be because of tariffs, because we do get some things from other countries. I know that I've seen an increase in my coffee, but there's lots and lots of other things. Olive oil is one that a lot of that comes from, over in the Mediterranean, if you're going to get really good olive oil. And so that's another thing, is that, not only are there people experience food insecurity, and a lot of that's caused by price, but it could be also caused by just the lack of. So that's another thing. Okay, so another thing that I want you to think about. Now, I learned this many years ago when I was working in manufacturing, that whether you're talking about food or clothes or absolutely anything, the components that we used in manufacturing are delivered by truck. There is a huge, huge network across this country of truck drivers that deliver. And if there were ever an interruption in that trucking, say for instance, if they went on strike, I think about, what was it, just in the last 2 or 3 years, we've had at least 2 bridge collapses that I can think of. So what if bridges collapsed? And, well, actually more than that, because here in East Tennessee and in western North Carolina during the storm last year, there were bridges collapsed. So what if it was a situation where the trucks just could not get to you? And I've thought about this several times. In the neighboring county where our church is at, there were people that were between 2 bridges, and the floodwaters came on both sides of it under those bridges, and the state had to close both of those bridges down until they could be inspected, because the floodwaters got up on them. And so they had to be shut down until they could inspect those bridges. Well, the people that lived in the middle between both of those bridges, my brother-in-law was one of them, they couldn't go anywhere. They could not go to the grocery store. They could not go get water. So the people that did not have anything in their houses stockpiled, fortunately, that only lasted, I think, maybe 5 to 7 days or something like that. And they were city water, so they could not drink their water. They couldn't take a bath. So that's another situation that you need to think about. Okay, the other thing that I wanted to touch on, and I did touch on this briefly a minute ago when I was talking about when I worked in manufacturing. But according to this article, it costs us, the organizations in this country, $184, not million, $billion every year for supply chain disruptions. Now, if there's that much supply chain disruptions, what happens if that supply chain disruption affects your food? There's so many times you go in the grocery store. I know I don't go to the grocery store real often, but when I do go, I almost always see areas in the store where the shelves are empty. Something's missing. And so it's an inconvenience, because if I'm looking for that particular thing, then I have to travel outside of my town to the next neighboring town in order to get that product. Another thing that I have found, and not just once, but 2 or 3 times this has happened to me, is to go into the grocery store. One time was looking for pasta, and my daughter picked up some pasta for me, brought it home. I opened it up, and it was buggy. Okay, so then I went back to the store to get some bread. To pick up just a bag of flour, because I needed to do something real quick. And every bit of the flour, their self-rising or what, it might have been plain, I don't remember, but every bit of the flour that they had on the shelf was out of date. Now, lots of things that would not have bothered me, if it was canned food or something like that. But when you go in the grocery store, especially in a grocery store where you've already found pasta that was buggy, chances are some of that flour is going to get buggy too. And not only that, but flour will go rancid because it's got, the oils in it. So that's one thing that I'm leery about. Unless I've brought it home and put it in the freezer and frozen it and then vacuum sealed it, it'll last a very long time like that. But I don't want to bring it home from the grocery store under those circumstances. So that's another thing to think about. In addition to talking about flour, we may have talked about this some before, but since the war in Ukraine is called the breadbasket of the world for a reason. Lots and lots and lots of the world's supply of grain comes from that Ukraine area. And there was a time where they were not allowed to ship anything out. Russia was not allowing them to ship out of Ukraine. And so I'm thinking that this article tells here how many tons come from that area. I'm not spotting it right off, but I know it's like in millions and millions of tons, like maybe 500 and something million tons of grain that come from that area. So that's a red flag to me. I know we grow some stuff in this country, but a lot of what we grow in this country, it gets purchased while it's in the field and it gets shipped out of this country as soon as it's harvested. So something else you need to think about. Okay, another thing in this article about food shortages is that over 50 countries, now think about that. That's out of what is there, 200 and something, 275, 285 or something like that countries in the world? But 50 countries in the world. This report says it's over 295 million people across 53 countries are facing acute food insecurity. And that's a 5% increase over the previous year. So, some of these places are going to be, your places like Yemen and Afghanistan and Sudan and some places like that. But the United States of America is one of those countries too. We probably grow enough food in this country to take care of the people in the United States. But we've got farmland in this country that's owned by China. And then, like I said, lots shipped out. Okay, so the next part that I wanted to talk about is this right here. This report says that only 36% of Americans have a 3-day supply of food in their house. Now, that just baffles me. What do people do? Go to the grocery store 2 or 3 times a week? 3 days is nothing. And then that just takes me back to my brother-in-law and the people that live between those 2 bridges in the neighboring county. What did they do if they only had a 3-day supply of food in the house when those bridges were closed off for, it was either 5 or 7 days? What did they do? And so, FEMA recommends having a 90-day supply of food and water in your house. Having 90 days worth of water is probably not real feasible for most people because, they say a gallon of water per person per day. Well, you're talking about a lot of water if you try to do that. But, there are other ways to accommodate for the water if you've got a water source in your area. and a way to purify it. So what I'm curious about, I know that over the last few years, like out in the Midwest 2 years ago, when they had the severe drought and the farmers took all of their beef to market, you can't just grow that beef again overnight. And right now, we're seeing, shorter supplies of beef in the grocery store, and the prices are astronomical compared to what they were. I can remember getting ground beef for 99 cents a pound. Now you're doing good to get a pound of ground beef for $6. That's just crazy. And so I just wanted to encourage you, if you do not have a supply of food in your house, I'm not, we're not prepping for the apocalypse, the end of the world, as a lot of people think about it. That's not why we prepare. It's, first of all, if the apocalypse happens, if the world ends, I'm not going to be here. So, but I'm preparing. It's like I said at the first of the video, my husband's having a heart cath next week. I don't know if they find something that he would be out of work for a while. Or to have a whole lot of medical bills. We don't know. But to prepare for a job loss right now, the job numbers that just came out were terrible. And those job numbers, they don't account for people that have already fallen off of the unemployment records. And they don't account for the people that are working 3 and 4 and 5 jobs that are, a day here and a day there, just to keep their head above water. And I know people that are doing that. And that don't account for those people that are just lazy and want to sponge off the system. That's based on the unemployment records. And so the people that are without jobs right now, and the available jobs in the country, are way less than the number of people that are looking for jobs in the country. So it's only smart to have some food in your house, to have some water in your house, and to have some money put back so that if something like this happens, that you still have money to pay your bills. And I was listening to a guy that was giving an update from the Helene situation in North Carolina, and he was talking about when it all took place, how he had carried his firearm. And then he said that when he first got out, he noticed that almost every man that he came in contact with was carrying a firearm. And so he was asked, did you ever have to use it? And he said, well, not really what you'd say use it, but he said there were some people that did not belong in his neighborhood that came through. They were just casing them out, checking to see what they could get, maybe what they could steal or whatever. And then he said that one of his neighbors did have somebody try to break into their house, and then when they realized he was home and armed, that they left. So, there's just all kinds of scenarios where these things will be important. So I'm going to leave this with you, and until the next time, God bless you.